Good morning. In today's session, we are going to review the first reading comprehension passage which appeared in IIM-CAT 2022. This particular passage about the different perception which Chinese have about a copy of an original had 4 questions. And the best way to benefit from this session is that I want you to download this passage and its questions from the link which has been provided in the comments and attempt this passage and all of the 4 questions in about 10 minutes of time, honestly. This is a procedure which is called as nudge practice, where you attempt the passage honestly and then I go about explaining the ideal way of handling this particular passage. So, concentrate now. I will start with a bit of brush up of the basic procedure. The first step obviously is to read the passage. In the first round of reading, you have to take care that you read the passage casually like a story. You read it casually, quickly, and you do not worry about focusing on understanding and remembering each and everything, because that is something which is impractical. In case a passage has only specific questions, these 7 types: vocabulary in context, line reference, specific detail, factual verification, factual negation, implied idea, and multiple statement. If only these kind of questions are present, then first round of reading is enough, which has to be done in a casual manner and quickly. But because you're spending time upon reading of the passage, so you need to get something out of it. There are 3 objectives which have to be met. After you have read the passage quickly and casually, then if your neighbor asks you what is this passage about, then you should be in a position to give a 1 or 2 sentence long answer which captures what the passage is all about. This has to be done casually. The second take from this particular passage is that you need to be clear about what is present where in the passage, because you're going to hunt back in the passage for your answers. So keep an eye open for nouns and adjectives, because all the specific questions would just be about nouns and adjectives or places from where nouns and adjectives are present. The third objective is you need to be clear about which genre does this passage belong to. There are a total of 5 genres. Each of them have their own particular challenges involved. You need to be clear about which type of passage is it and what are the challenges that you're definitely going to encounter in this passage. Suppose the passage has 1 or more general or and perception questions. In that situation, you will have to go in for doing a second round of reading. This second round of reading has to be done very carefully, where you've got to carefully read each paragraph once again and have to take care that after reading the first paragraph, you have to write down the topic of that paragraph, which is the topic of the whole passage also. Apart from this, you have to take care that you read every paragraph very carefully and you write down what is the point which that paragraph is telling you. The main argument of that paragraph, the reason why that paragraph is present, you have to write that thing down. This point of the paragraph which you have to write includes the point of the first paragraph. Remember that the topic of the first paragraph and the point of the first paragraph are 2 different things. Whatever you write down, the topic of the paragraph and the points of every paragraph, this is called as critical map of the passage. And this critical map of the passage is important for solving all of the general and the specific type of questions with accuracy. So after you've done this, you attempt questions, but while attempting questions, remember, you need to be excellent at identifying the question type. Is the question specific, general, or is it the perception type? And based upon which kind of question you are attempting, you need to use a specific strategy for that particular question type. For example, if you're looking at specific questions, which are of these 7 types, then you will have to take care that after reading the question carefully, you identify the keyword and the key context of the question. Once you've identified that, you need to paraphrase the whole question in a simpler language so that your brain understands it very properly. Once this has been done, you go back to the passage and you find out where the key sentence is present which is answering this question which has been asked. This key sentence will be found on the basis of keyword and the key context of the question which you have already identified. After identifying the key sentence, you will have to paraphrase the key sentence, simplify it in your own language so that you can understand it better. And once you've paraphrased the key sentence, Then you've got to match this key sentence with the question and see whether this key sentence is really answering the question or not. Suppose it is answering the question, only in that situation you're going to take the next step, which is you've got to match your key sentences information with the 4 options, and you have to eliminate 3 choices based upon a certain excuse that you can find, something objectionable that you can find in the answer choice, because of which you kick it out. This is a clear process of elimination. After you've eliminated 3 choices, whatever remains has to be the right answer, whether you like it or not, whether it is an attractive answer or not. In case of general questions, the procedure is slightly different. For all general questions, you will have to take care that as a first step, you need to be good at identifying the question type from its keywords. For example, if a question uses the word title, if a question says what is a suitable title for this passage, it is a general question. If a question asks you what is the tone of the author or what is the tone of the passage, then it is a general question. If the question asks you with which one of the following will the author agree or disagree, then this is a general question. Similarly, there are other keywords also which you need to be good at, and you need to be good at identifying all of these keywords. Suppose you find any of such keywords in the question's language which identifies it as a general question, then you need to take the next step, which is you will have to read the passage a second time and carefully prepare a map of the passage. Once the map has been prepared, then you need to match the options with the critical map and eliminate 3 choices which have something objectionable extra inside them, which is not matching with the map or with the passage. In case of the third type of question, which is perception questions, here you have to be good at identifying that it is a perception question of a particular type based upon its keywords, which you have covered in class. And once you identified that the question is a perception question having a certain requirement, then you need to go back to the passage and you have to read that one sentence, that one paragraph, or a particular whole passage at times as the question may require. Based upon that, you need to prepare your own answer to the question which has been asked, and then you need to match your own answer with the 4 options and eliminate 3 choices. Whatever remains has to be the best answer, has to be the right answer. So, if I look at the first passage which appeared in case of IIM-CAT 2022, then this particular passage, it came from a book by the name of Shanzai, Deconstruction in Chinese, by a South Korean philosopher and cultural theorist by the name of Byung-Chul Han. This book traces the thread of decreation in Chinese thought or Chinese philosophy from constantly changing classical masterpieces to fake cell phones that are even better than the original at times. Now, this guy, Byung-Chul Han, is a professor of philosophy and cultural studies at Berlin University of the Arts. He's a 65-year-old South Korean philosopher settled in Germany and has written 2-3 books only. He's a person who's known for writing very objective books in simple language, and he does not beat around the bush with a lot of jargon or technical words. So even a lay person can possibly understand his books. This is the kind of erudite authors whose passages are picked up in case of IIM-CAT and XAT. 64-year-old, somebody who spent about 40 years in academia. He's been a teacher for about 40 years, and during these last 40 years, he has done nothing but read books, teach students, supervise students in doing research, and doing research himself. Such a learned, erudite person is what is required for RC passages. Now, the difficulty level of this particular passage is 3 on a scale of 1 to 5. It is a slightly easier passage as compared to a lot of passages which appear on IIM-CAT, and the reason behind that is that this guy writes in a very objective, simple language, which is not peppered with a lot of jargon. It is an argumentative passage, and obviously it clearly has a conclusion or a viewpoint and a certain bias which gets reflected in the whole passage, and you need to be great at identifying what is that conclusion of the author or viewpoint of the author, and what are the reasons that the author has given to support that viewpoint of his. This particular passage has been picked up from the middle of a particular chapter of this particular book, and it has been modified to a certain extent to remove any contextual cues which can help you. So things have been made more difficult as compared to the language which is present in this particular book. It is a 5 paragraph long passage, and there were 506 words, so it's not a very long passage. And this is the standard construction of IIM-CAT passages, that they're about 5 to 6 paragraphs long, about 500 to 600 words maximum. This is the passage which appeared. It has to be read twice. In the first reading, you'll have to read it casually like a story in order to get a holistic picture with the 3 objectives in mind which I have already talked about. And in case there are general questions for the passage, then you'll have to do a second reading which has to be more careful, and you'll have to prepare a map of the passage. So let's start with the first quick and casual reading. I want you to pause the video at this particular stage and resume only after you've read the passage. Pause the video, please. Okay, let's start. This passage gives information, so it is an expository passage. But yes, there are tones of argumentation also which are involved here. After you have read this passage carefully and you prepare a map of the passage, the first step is to read the first paragraph very carefully and identify what is the topic of this particular paragraph. This first paragraph, its topic is China and Western countries differ in the perception of importance of a copy of an original. According to the Chinese, an exact copy has the same value, and if a copy is not exact, then it has less value. The West has a different viewpoint, and their viewpoint is a copy and doesn't have the same value as the original. When you read the second paragraph, then the second paragraph's point is that in case of Japan, the grand shrine is rebuilt every 20 years, after every 20 years, and it is considered 1300 years old. On the other hand, the next paragraph says that there is a German cathedral whose stones get weared out, so it is continuously rebuilt and all the broken stones are replaced. This is what the third paragraph tells you. The fourth paragraph talks about something called as a Western unassailable original. Their extra reliance on something which is an original. But this Western unassailable original concept was not there in the 17th century, and till 17th century, people were free to do a lot of intervention in original artworks when they were doing restoration, and they did not respect originals. Last paragraph talks about Korean human cloning and how a particular cloning expert from South Korea gave the statement that Buddhist religion has a concept of recycling and reincarnation, so it kind of permits cloning. So the passage topic is difference in perception between the Chinese and the West with respect to value of a copy versus an original. This whole thing written on the right is the map of the whole passage along with the topic and the arguments of each of the paragraphs. This will help us do all the general and perception questions. If you look at the questions which came, the first question says which one of the following statements does not correctly express the similarity between the I say Grand Shrine and the Cathedral of Freiburg Minster, this is a specific question of factual negation type. Second question is a perception question which involves factual negation because of the presence of the word except, and it is a forward application question. The third question is again a perception question, and it is factual negation and a forward application question. So whatever is your understanding of the passage, you've got to apply it to another situation, to a different context. Fourth question is a perception question, factual negation, and again a forward application question. So this particular passage had 3 perception questions and 1 specific question. So second, concentrated, very careful reading and making of the map was something which was essential in case of this passage. Required. So if I look at question number 1, the first step out here is that we have to read the question carefully, and we have to paraphrase the question in our own language so that we can handle it better. After we've paraphrased this question, then this question, which is saying the value that the modern West assigns to an unassailable original has resulted in all of the following except, in simple language it is saying the importance given to the unassailable original by the modern West did not result in which of the following. This is what this question is saying in simple language. If you identify the question type, it is a clear, specific question and factual negation question. So, let's look at the first option. The first option says it discourages them from making interventions in ancient art. So, I will have to go back to the passage and see where I can get a hint. If I read this particular part, between the 2 arrows, just read it carefully. In the field of art as well, the idea of an unassailable original developed historically in the Western world. Back in the 17th century in the West, excavated artworks from antiquity were treated quite differently from today. They were not restored in a way that was faithful to the original. Instead, there was massive intervention in these works, changing their appearance. This part in simple language is saying, after paraphrasing, that modern West would not make interventions in art. While in the 17th century, yes, they were okay with doing it. But because we're talking about the modern West, so if I look at the first one, it is perfectly correct according to the passage, this part of the passage. First option says it discourages them from making interventions in ancient art, which is the same as what we found out from this sentence. If I look at the second option, it says it allows regular employment for certain craftsmen. So I'll have to go back to the passage to see if that is mentioned somewhere. And I will come across this particular part in the third paragraph. This part says, as a result, the cathedral is continually being examined for damage and eroded stones are replaced, and in the cathedral's dedicated workshop, copies of the damaged sandstone figures are constantly being produced. So this part is telling me that the cathedral has a dedicated workforce to continuously replace damaged parts, which is the same as whatever option 2 is saying. It says it allows regular employment for certain craftsmen. So option 2 is also correct. But we're not looking for the correct one, we're looking for the wrong one according to the passage, remember that. It's a factual negation question. It uses the word except. Now if I look at the third option, it says it discourages them from carrying out human cloning. Now if I go back to the passage and I read this particular part in the last paragraph, starting from the second sentence onwards, this part says, this part talks about the Korean human cloning and how the Buddhist religion permits cloning. This is what it says in simple language. The question was about the modern West. Does the concept of unassailable original discouraged them from carrying out human cloning. No. The information given here is about Koreans, not about the West people, people from the West. So this is the wrong one, according to the passage. Now we look at the fourth option also. Fourth says it discourages them from simultaneous displays of multiple copies of a painting. So when I read this and I go back to the passage and I see the last part of the first paragraph, the last three sentences, and I read it, it says a discrepancy with regard to the understanding of what a copy is has often led to misunderstandings and arguments between China and Western museums. The Chinese often send copies abroad instead of originals in the firm belief that they are not essentially different from the originals. The rejection that then comes from the Western museums is perceived by the Chinese as an insult. This part is talking about Western museums reject displays of copies, and that is something which is the same as whatever option number 4 is saying. It discourages the people from the West from simultaneous displays of multiple copies of a painting. They actually frown upon this and they reject it. So if I look at the four options, option 1, 2 and 4 are supported by the passage. And option 3 is the only odd one out here. It disagrees with the information given in the passage. As a result of which, option 3 becomes the right answer for question number 1. Okay. If I look at question number 2, it says, based on the passage, which one of the following copies would a Chinese museum be unlikely to consider as having less value than the original? The first step is obviously to paraphrase this particular question, and in simple language, this particular question is saying, according to the Chinese, which one of the following will have the same value as the original? According to the Chinese, which one of the following will have the same value as the original? So I need to identify the question type. This is a perception question, forward application. So I'll have to develop an understanding from the passage, and based upon that I need to apply that understanding on a newer context which would be there in the options. So I need to first of all look at what is mentioned about original and what would have the same value as the original. If I read the first three sentences, it says the Chinese have two different concepts of a copy. Fangzipin are imitations where the difference from the original is obvious. These are small models of copies that can be purchased in a museum shop. For example, the second concept for a copy is Fuzipin. They are exact reproductions of the original, which for the Chinese are of equal value to the original. So, according to the Chinese, exact copy will have the same value as the original, and copy which has differences will have less value as compared to the original. This is the information that I've picked up from the passage about what will have less value or more value. Based upon this, now when I look at answer choices, first answer choice says Pablo Picasso's photograph of Vincent van Gogh's original painting printed to exactly the same scale. Now if it is a photograph, it would be an exact replica, I agree. But the problem is it is a photograph of a painting. So it is not the same, there is a difference. It is not an exact copy. Had it been Pablo Picasso's painting of Vincent van Gogh's original painting printed to exactly the same scale, then yes, it would have the same value. So this is wrong. If I look at the second one, it says Pablo Picasso's painting of Vincent van Gogh's original painting, identical in every respect. If it is identical in every respect, and it is a painting of a painting, and it is completely identical, then it is an exact copy and it would have the same value as the original. So this will have the same value as the original, but I still need to check the other two choices. for the sake of accuracy. So I'll move on to the third option. It says Pablo Picasso's painting of Vincent van Gogh's original painting. Fine, everything is fine so far. Bearing Picasso's signature. Because Picasso has added his signature, it is not an exact copy. This is the reason why this will not have the same value. If I look at the fourth one, it says Pablo Picasso's miniaturized but otherwise faithful and accurate painting of Vincent van Gogh's original painting. So it's a painting of a painting, very faithful and accurate, but it is miniaturized, it is smaller. If it is smaller, it is not an exact copy and it will not have the same value. As a result, this also is wrong. So if I look at the answer choices, option 2 is the one that we require. Okay, now let's look at question number 3. The first step obviously is to paraphrase the question to simplify its language. When we read the question, which says, which one of the following scenarios is unlikely to follow from the arguments in the passage? Then in simple language, this question is asking which one of the following does not agree with the information or arguments given in the passage. The question type is perception. It's a forward application question. You got to understand from the passage and apply your understanding on a different context, which would be present in the 4 options. So, if I read the whole passage, then the passage, its argument basically is that Chinese consider exact copy having equal value, which is opposite of the Western view. In the West, the view is that a copy is a copy and doesn't have the same value as an original. Till 17th century, the West did not mind restoring antiquity artworks with massive interventions in these works, changing their appearance. And it also talks about the South Koreans and a particular person who went in for doing human cloning and gave in justification that his religion, Buddhism, permits cloning. Now, based upon this argument of the whole passage, now we will look at options. So, if I look at option 1, it says a 21st century Christian scientist, a modern one, is likely to oppose cloning because of his philosophical orientation. This is something which is likely according to the argument of the passage, because Christian scientists in 21st century would have the concept of unassailable original. So this is likely. If I look at the second option, it says a 17th century French artist. So if there's somebody who's a 17th century French artist, a European artist, a Western artist, then obviously this person will not have the same viewpoint which the modern West has. It says a 17th century French artist who adhered to Christian worldview would need to be completely true to the original intent of the painting when restoring it. This is not applicable to the 17th century people, it is applicable to the modern West. So this is something which is unlikely according to the passage information. Then I move on to the third option. It says a 20th century Japanese Buddhist monk would value a reconstructed shrine as the original. Yes, that's mentioned also. So this is something which is definitely likely. Then we move on to the fourth option, which says a 17th century British painter would have no problem adding personal touches when restoring an ancient Roman painting. Now, because this person belongs to the 17th century and the West, at that time they did not believe in an unassailable original. That is the reason why this is something which is likely according to the passage information. As a result, we have this situation of the 4 options, and automatically we are going to pick up the second option as the best one out of the lot. This is definitely unlikely to follow from the arguments of the passage. Second option. Let's move on to the fourth one. The fourth question, the first step obviously is to read the question carefully and paraphrase it. When I read it, it says, Which one of the following statements does not correctly express the similarity between I say Grand Shrine and the Cathedral of Freiburg Minster? So when I paraphrase it, then this question is in simple language saying which one of the following does not show similarity between the Grand Shrine and the Cathedral. This is a question of the specific type, factual negation question, because it uses the word not inside it, and I need to go in for preparing my own answer. So I read all of that information about the Grand Shrine and the Cathedral in Southwest Germany, what happens in case of the shrine, and what was the viewpoint during 17th century or till 17th century. Now if I look at this information, then it says in simple language the Grand Shrine temple is rebuilt every 20 years, but Japanese consider it to be 1300 years old. The German cathedral has been continuously renovated since Middle Ages, attempt to preserve old stones, but even they will get replaced with new ones as they get eroded. This is the information which this particular part says about the shrine and the cathedral. So now with this information in my mind, I look at answer choices. First answer choice says both were built as places of worship. Yes. One was a Grand Shrine temple, another one was a cathedral, so both of them were built as places of worship, definitely. This is similar. This shows a similarity between the two of them. Second one says both can be regarded as very old structures. So if I look at the information which has been given here, then yes, this is also a similarity between the two of them. Now let's move on to the third option, which says both are continuously undergoing restoration. Now the German cathedral is continuously undergoing restoration or renovation, but in case of the Grand Shrine, it is rebuilt after 20 years completely from scratch. So this is a dissimilarity between the two of them. Both of them are not continuously undergoing restoration. One of them is, which is the German cathedral. The Grand Shrine is rebuilt after every 20 years. It is not undergoing continuous restoration. Let's check fourth, which says both will one day be completely rebuilt. Yes. If I look at the information given here, then this is similarity between both of them. Even in the case of the German cathedral, a time will come when each and every old stone has been replaced. So this becomes a similarity between both of them. Now if I compare the four answer choices, then the third one is the one which shows a dissimilarity, as a result of which we end up with option 3 as the answer to question number 4. Now, in later sessions, as a follow-up to this particular session, we will learn concepts which are tested on IIM-CAT and XAT, and we learn the ideal way of answering previous year questions that have already appeared on IIM-CAT and XAT. Also, if you found this video session helpful, then I want you to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can automatically get the future instruction videos that I plan to upload weekly or on a fortnightly basis. I also want you to share this video with your fellow aspirants so that others can also benefit. This is all for today. Bye.